and he fell asleep all the time. He claimed it was because of chemotherapy and so forth. I think he just liked to sleep in church.
It was more of a calming effect. Maybe that's what it was.
Came across this. Huh? My voice was soothing. The music was very soothing. I came across this in looking at Mother's Day. Proclamation signed May 8th, 1914, by Woodrow Wilson, President of the United States. Whereas by joint resolution approved May 8, 1914, designating the second Sunday in May as Mother's Day. And for other purposes, the President is authorized and requested to issue a proclamation calling upon the government officials to display the United States flag on all government buildings, and the people of the United States to display the flag at their homes or other suitable places on the second Sunday in May as a public expression of our love and reverence for the mothers of our country. In fact, somebody from Solving Grace posted yesterday, you're supposed to display your flag on Mother's Day, and that's why. And whereas by the joint resolution, by the said joint resolution, it is made the duty of the President to request the observance of the second Sunday in May as provided for in the said joint resolution. Now, therefore, I, Woodrow Wilson, President of the United States of America, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the said joint resolution, do hereby direct the government officials to display the United States flag on all government buildings, and to invite the people of the United States to display the flag at their homes or other suitable places the second Sunday in May as a public expression of our love and reverence for the mothers of our country, in witness whereof I have set my hand and caused the seal of the United States to be hitherunto affixed, done in the city of Washington this 9th day of May in the year of our Lord 1914, and of the independence of the United States 138, signed Woodrow Wilson. I like it. I like it. So, display your flags. I need to put mine up. Huh?
For the lake.
Yeah. It's in the lake. Why should, oh, there's the 5 generation picture, by the way. I wasn't sure whether Mom would be here, but I like doing it this way. This is by maiden names: Mary Kennedy, Fern Hearn, Ellen Boyd, Cindy Heinrich, and Bethany McDaniel. But now we can do by married names, so this would be Mary Hearn, Fern Boyd, Ellen Heinrich, Cindy McDaniel, and Bethany Marshburn. No, Bethany Baker. It's Caitlin Marshburn, her sister. That was 1984 that was taken, and Dad had it on his life. In Wichita, Sawyer, Kansas, little town that if you blink, it's gone. You drove right by it. Why honor Mom? Well, she's your mom. Because of who she is, she gave you your life, she cared for you, nurtured you. I love listening to Linda Durney talk about her mom. I just do. She talks about her mom a lot, which is really cool. But she always has such affection for her mother. And that is so neat. I love that. I love the picture that she posted on Facebook. Oh, yeah. She's mom. She brought you into this world. But because of who God is. God gave you that mother. He made you. He gave you life. He put you in that home. He gave grace to you, common grace that we all get, as well as saving grace. And he said in Exodus 20:12, honor your mother and father. In fact, it's the first commandment with promise because it says that your days may be long on the earth. And for the Jewish people, that your days may be long in the land that I'm going to give you, which is interesting because that comes into the passage that I'm going to talk about tonight. Well, how do I do that? And we're gonna give several of these from Scripture here with what I'm going to talk about. But caring for her needs. What we're doing this summer, moving my in-laws, is more about honoring Mom than Dad. Now, please don't take me wrong, but it's Mom's needs I'm most concerned about because she still has her mind and her health, and she's the one that's being weighted down. And so I'm concerned about that. We want to show the respect. wait a second, you don't know my mom. Well, you do, but some people might say, I can't respect her because of who she is. Just wait till today. Loving her, even when she's unlovely. Turn in the Bible to the book of Ruth. Joshua, Judges, Ruth. Naomi lived during the time of the Judges. The book of Ruth comes right after the Judges because it is during the time of the Judges. How do we know that? Well, verse 1 says, "Now it came to pass in the days when the Judges ruled." So we know that it happened. We don't know exactly what judge. We don't know when exactly, but there were a number of famines, and if you read through the book of Judges, brought into the land as God's judgment on the land, because in the book of Judges you have this spiral, right? The people sin, God judged them, He put them into under oppression, they cry out to God, He sends a deliverer, they live for God as long as the deliverer is alive, and then it starts all over again, and it gets worse and worse with every judge. So let's talk a little bit about Naomi. Naomi means delightful. And names mean things. Names in Scripture means a lot of things, mean a lot to that person. And so I think you could ascertain that Naomi was probably a very delightful person to be around. Do you know anybody like that? That just has that kind of personality that, I'll tell you, there's a lady in the back row. Forgive me, Nana, I'm not talking about you this time. But there's a lady in the back row that has that kind of personality. She's just delightful to be around. Wouldn't you agree, Pastor Heinrich? Yeah, I know. We love you too, Nana, but I'm talking about my mother today. Don can talk about you. She married Elimelech, which means my God is king. And Delightful and my God is king got together and had two sons. One was named Sick and the other named Pining, or Failing. That's what the words mean. So Naomi and Elimelech had two sons, Mahalon and Chilion, which means sick and pining. Well, as we read in the text, there was famine in the land, and a certain man, verse 1 of Bethlehem, Judea, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his two sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife was Naomi, and the name of the sons were Mahalon and Chilion, Ephratites of Bethlehem of Judea. So they lived in Bethlehem. Well, back up. Come on. This thing's not moving right. So they lived in Bethlehem, which is, Bethlehem means the house of bread. And they left Bethlehem, the house of bread, because there was no bread in the house. Right? I am being a little bit funny tonight. It's okay. I'm meaning to be. So it's okay to laugh at some of these things. Okay? So, my God is king and delightful, and their two sons, Sick and Pining, take off from the house of bread because there's no bread in the house. And they head to Moab. So they're in Bethlehem. You see it? And they go down here to Moab. Now, who is Moab? Moab we find in the book of Genesis, chapter 19, in verse 36 through 38. We're not going to go there. But he was the son of Lot's incestual relationship with his daughter. Lot and his daughters left Sodom and Gomorrah behind. Lot's wife turned around and said, I want to go back, and she's didn't go anywhere. The daughter said, we don't have husbands, we got to carry on the name, so let's get our dad drunk, and Moab was born, literal. So, she was from the house of bread, she made a bad move. They went down to Moab. Deuteronomy 23:3 said that Moab, the children of Moab, Moabites, were not to have any part in the nation of Israel. And the Israelites were not to marry Moabitess. In fact, thousands died in a great slaughter because they married Moabite women. So, they have a new address. My God is King died. Now, did my God is King Elimelech really see God as King? When God had put them in the land of Israel and said to stay there, and yet he left the house of bread because there was no bread? My God is King had a problem. He said, my stomach is king. Right? And he took delightful and sick and pining. And maybe he left because he was afraid sick and pining might die. Because they had no bread in the house of bread. And so he dies. And pretty soon, jump beat tonight. Pretty soon she has new daughters-in-law. Orpha, stiff-necked, marries pining. And Ruth, friendship, marries sick, Mahalo. 10 years go by, and we know that her husband had died, and the sons died without grandchildren. That's important. Leaving no heirs at all. And Naomi is faced with the dilemma that what to do. Now this is about mothers and Mother's Day. Okay, so follow me. Naomi has a tragedy on her hand. She's now a widow. She has stiff-necked and friendship as daughters-in-law that are from the land of Moab, that aren't supposed to be married, have been married to her sons in the first place. And she knows that if she takes them back to the land of Israel with her, that could be bad news because people died because they married Moabites in the past. And so she has a dilemma what to do. And she decides to go home. She makes a very good decision. It's time for this Jewish lady to go back home. God has visited Bethlehem, and there is now bread in the house of bread. He has restored fertility to the ground. Apparently a new judge has come on. That's probably what has happened here. They were under judgment. A deliverer has come. They're living now under a judge. Famine is over. And Naomi finds out and she decides to go home. But she gives pretty bad advice. You see, bad advice because anytime that somebody's confronted with the truth, you should never turn them back towards evil, right? And so her bad advice is for her daughters to go home, to their own homes. I want to take you there, if you don't mind. We're in chapter 1 still. And verse 8. Verse 7, we'll start there. Therefore, she went out from the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on their way to return to the land of Judah. Now, Naomi takes them with her on the first part of the journey. And maybe they get to the edge of Moab, or wherever they get. Naomi's thinking about this. I'm using some sanctified imagination, by the way, folks. Is that okay? This really happened, so you've got to put yourself in Naomi's place. She's walking along with her daughters-in-law. Maybe she's thinking about what's going to happen when she gets to Bethlehem with these 2 girls. And the questions about her bringing Moabitesses into Bethlehem. I don't know. And so she stops and she says this. Naomi said to her daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband." So she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And then they said to her, "Surely we will return with you to your people." But Naomi, now both of them said this. Both of them felt some sort of obligation to their mother-in-law. She's alone. And she was pleasant, right? She was delightful. She was a nice person to be around. They don't want to leave her alone. But Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb that they may be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, and go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, if I should say should have a husband tonight, and should also bear sons, would you wait for them to be grown?" Now, for you kids in the audience that don't understand this, what on earth is she talking about? I wouldn't want to marry my husband's brother. Well, that's how it worked back then. if a woman was married to a man and she died and he had a brother that was unmarried, that brother had an obligation to marry. He died. Did I say she died?
Yes.
The husband dies, the wife is left, the brother of the husband has an obligation to marry her and raise up children to his brother. Got it?
There you go.
And Naomi's saying, I don't have any other sons, and would you wait the 20 years, or maybe just 15? Or 18, wow, almost. Would you wait? 20 years, a woman who's 20 is now 40. Would you wait to marry this young squirt? Go home, she says. Verse 14, they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah, stiff-necked, kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth, friendship, clung to her. And she said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. This is where I see Naomi as realize Naomi is now bitter against God. We'll see that in a minute. And she is so bitter against her God that she doesn't even want them to come and be a part of the commonwealth of Israel worshiping the true God. She's like, go back to your little g gods. Go on. Little g gods. Ruth said, entreat me not to leave you, or to turn back from following after you, for wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and where you are buried, the Lord do so me, and me also, if anything but death parts you and me. What it takes a vow to stay, and a vow to become a Jewish proselyte. She accepts the God of the Jews, Jehovah God, as her God. That's important for the end of the story. She becomes a Jewish proselyte. At this point, she is taking a vow, and she clings to her, verse 14, will not let her go, giving her this pledge. Stiff-necked went home. As Naomi enters into Bethlehem, verse 20, they say, look, delightful's back. Oh, I'm so glad. I so enjoy your company. Oh, Naomi, it's so good to have you back. Look at her reaction, verse 20. She says, do not call me delightful. Call me bitter. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. Notice the direction of her anger is against the Almighty. She understood that she was judged. Why? She went to Moab. In my opinion, she was judged because she went to Moab. And yet, God gave her Ruth because she went to Moab. So, you have a little bit of both here. But she was focused. She was upset with God, and she was now a very bitter woman. Here it is. Here is friendship, who has known the joys of being around Naomi. And now Naomi is coming back, and she's a bitter woman. Anybody know a bitter woman? You like being around them? Naomi made the pledge, understanding how bitter, Ruth made the pledge to Naomi, understanding how bitter Naomi had gotten. And Ruth desired to help her, honoring a bitter old woman. For those that say, you don't know my mom, you don't know Naomi. She would have been hard to live with. There was no hope. She had no hope. She had lost her inheritance. There was no way to get it back. She had no sons. She had lost any means of livelihood. She would live her life as a beggar, depending upon the generosity of others for the rest of her life. Women had no means of self-support. She had no family left to speak of. She was bitter against God. And she was so upset with God, there wasn't any way she was going to ask anyone else. But Ruth, for time's sake, I'm not going to go through the whole story, although it's a beautiful, beautiful story. But I want to point out one thing. After Ruth had made the pledge to her, look at verse 18. Now you can read a little too much into verse 18, but let's just use a little fun, sanctified imagination for a minute. When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped speaking to her. The rest of the way to Bethlehem, she didn't speak. She stopped begging her to go home. She stopped trying to. But I can think that there weren't too many words exchanged anyway, right? Well, Ruth said, I'm coming anyway. And Naomi was like, okay. Can you see it? No. Naomi stopped begging Ruth to go back. That's what the scripture means. But I think we can take it just a little bit farther with a little bit of imagination here. They get back to Bethlehem, and Ruth, apparently Naomi told her a little bit about how things worked, or maybe it was similar in Moab. The rights of the poor were to glean behind the reapers, and this was spring, so we're talking about sometime about this time of year. The barley harvest would have been, Dad, help me if I'm wrong, May, and wheat harvest in June, or June and July, somewhere in May, June for barley and wheat in July, somewhere in that neighborhood. Wheat in Kansas was July. Well, Kansas isn't Mediterranean climate. Winter crops. Okay, these are winter crops. They're harvested in spring. All right, always. That's the climate of Bethlehem, because it's the same climate we have. When does it rain? In the winter. When is it dry? Summer. You don't plant things in the spring and expect to have anything by the end of the summer, do you? If you don't water it. So you understand. So this is sometime in the spring. They get back. The harvest has started. The barley harvest has started, and Ruth goes out and she begins to gather, as is her right, whatever got missed. And the Jewish law, the law of God in the Old Testament, actually is very specific about the fact that they had to leave things to glean. They could not glean after themselves, and they could not completely strip a field. There had to be some left for the poor. That's God's socialism. Isn't that neat? Mm-hmm. You know? Way of taking care of the poor. They didn't need the government. But you know what? They had to go get it. They had to get off for it. They had to go get off their seats and get out of their houses, and they had to go glean. And so Ruth did, and Ruth gleaned a good amount that first time, and she got to know Boaz. And all of a sudden, Naomi's demeanor changes. Now I want you to understand why. Ruth had brought hope into her life. What hope? Well, hope that she was going to survive, because Ruth went out and provided for her. Ruth was honoring her. Ruth was loving her. But more than that, Ruth went out and was, by the providence of God, the very God Naomi is bitter at and angry with, God puts together with this close relative Boaz, and Ruth comes in with this bushel of barley and tells about Boaz, and all of a sudden, if you read the book, Naomi's demeanor has changed. Oh, Boaz is a close relative. You go back to his field tomorrow. This could work. Can you see it? And all of a sudden, Boaz is telling his people to leave a little extra for her to glean, and doing all these things to take care of. She's eating with his gleaners and his harvesters and so forth. And next thing you know, Ruth is asking the question. Yes, in this case, the woman asks. She lays down at his feet at the end of his bed, and that is a request for her to be redeemed from Boaz to Boaz. And Boaz wakes up in the middle, wakes up, takes her saw, he fills it with wheat, because he was threshing the wheat. I should have put in how they thresh the wheat, but some other time. And sends her home, and Naomi's just excited as can be now. This bitter woman that walked back in, being loved by her daughter-in-law, being shown hope, is now just as excited. He won't rest till it's taken care of. We're going to be okay. And he goes to the city gate, finds the one kinsman redeemer that's closer, and says, "You can buy the land." It's interesting. Boaz was so slick. Says, Naomi's returned, and I want to buy the land that was her husband's and redeem it. Oh no, I'll do that. Well, by doing that, you also get Ruth. You can have it. It's really, read it. I'm not reading the whole book tonight. Read it. It's so fun. What a neat love story. How did they seal it? They exchanged shoes. They took off their sandals and gave each other their sandals. And that's how they sealed the deal. I think I like shaking hands better. How about you? But they did. They exchanged sandals. And Boaz redeems Ruth. Ruth followed her advice about Boaz. Ruth loved her, and God honored Ruth by Boaz taking her as his wife. Ruth not only had become a proselyte, but now is part of the family of Israel by marriage to Boaz. And they had a son, Obed, whose name means servant. Interesting, Obed's son Jesse, I couldn't find a name on, a meaning on Jesse. But Obed begot Jesse, and Jesse begot David, who was King David. And David begot both Joseph and Mary came from David's line, which means Joseph and Mary and Jesus were of the line of Ruth and Boaz, who loved her mother-in-law, despite her being unlovely, and honored her mom, and honored her mother-in-law's God, became part of the way of salvation through Jesus Christ. Isn't that neat? So next time you think of Ruth, think of her husband sick, and her brother-in-law pining, and her dad, my stomach is king, right? Her father-in-law. Right? Remember those things, though. And remember that honoring somebody that's unlovely can change them, can help to change them by giving them hope, by showing them love. It's nice to be able to honor the lovely, too, isn't it? We're going to do that in just a minute. After we pray, we have something for the lovely that's in the room. But I think we have a grandmother with the most kids here, most children here. That'd have to be Nana. Well, let's see. You have
4 and 4.
It's the same.
It is the same. You too.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Wait, and then
Father God, we thank you for this story, this love story that you've included in your word. That we can enjoy it, but also find great instruction for our lives. Thank you for our moms. Thank you that we can honor them in a very special way today and throughout the year. We thank you for those of us that still have our moms. What a precious gift that is. In Jesus' name, amen. We're going to sing a close.